This video is sponsored by Heretic's Guide to Devotion and Divinity, now on Kickstarter.
Yeah, and that's something that was literally terrified characters and players alike, where you do something and there's no roll, there's no chance to, you choose to do something and you're just gone, you're dead. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. And that's absolutely brutal. Whereas nowadays, it's, very different than what it was before. I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds.
All right, so we're gonna dive in and talk about a magic item, an artifact, the Sphere of Annihilation. It's gone through changes throughout the editions. And we're gonna just kind of, jive on this and see what's going on.
All right, this video was inspired by a meme I had put up on the Facebook page the other day, and basically, here's the meme, and the fact that the meme is poking fun of, the discrepancy between the description of the Sphere of Annihilation and what it actually does, and I'm like, I don't think we've ever talked about the Sphere of Annihilation. And then I went back and read it, and I'm like, yes, this is much different than the dread item that I remember from my earliest days of gaming.
Now I've never been through the Tomb of Annihilation. I've heard stories, and I've definitely been subject to the fear of the Sphere, from tales of our early group and the things that you guys have gone through. And I know you've said, like, when you've described things, all you remember is kind of like the entryway, and that you've kind of been ribbed on that because you don't know if you've made it further in, or if you just don't remember it.
Yeah, so, the thing that made the Sphere of Annihilation kind of infamous and gave it its notoriety is the Tomb of Horrors. And even if you haven't played the Tomb of Horrors, even if you don't really know anything about the Tomb of Horrors, I feel like a lot of D&D players will recognize the demon face sculpture that's appeared all over the place in correlation with Dungeons and Dragons. Well, basically, that gaping maw, it's not that big. It's only like 2 foot in diameter. It's a black hole. You can shove things in it and they just disappear. If you actually put a player into it, they also disappear. And the flavor text reads something along the lines of, you find plenty of room inside this Sphere of Annihilation, and you're just dead. You're destroyed.
Yeah, and, that's something that, was literally terrified, characters and players alike, where, you do something and there's no roll, there's no chance to, you choose to do something and you're just gone, you're dead. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, and that's absolutely brutal. Whereas nowadays, it's, very different than what it was before.
Yeah, so what we're going to do with this video, we're going to discuss, how it was, how it is, and how we might change it to bring it back to those previous levels of notoriety and infamy that I feel like it really deserves.
Indeed. All right, so I'm going to pull up the 3.5 version of the Sphere of Annihilation. As a globe of absolute blackness, a ball of nothingness, 2 feet in diameter. The object is actually a hole in the continuity of the multiverse. Any matter that comes into contact with the sphere is instantly sucked into the void, gone, and utterly destroyed. Only the direct intervention of a deity can restore an annihilated character. Should a gate spell be cast upon a Sphere of Annihilation, there is a 50% chance that the spell destroys it, a 35% chance that the spell does nothing, and a 15% chance that a gap is torn in the spatial fabric, catapulting everything within 180 feet radius into another plane. If a Rod of Cancellation touches a Sphere of Annihilation, they negate each other in a tremendous explosion. Everything within a 60-foot radius takes 2d6 times 10 points of damage. Dispel Magic and Mage's Disjunction have no effect on a sphere.
So you can see like how brutal it was. Like there's also a whole section about controlling it and vying for control of the sphere. I left that part out because I don't really care about those mechanics. I just wanted to impart like how brutal this artifact was. Even in 3.5, you could just be utterly obliterated. And then the things that kind of affect the actual Sphere of Annihilation, they might kill you as well or banish you to another plane.
But it's just like if something comes in contact with it, it's pulled in. So like if you literally poke it with a finger, your whole body is pulled in. You're gone. Utterly, utterly crazy. And, Doesn't say there's a saving throw. There's not a chance to, oh, it only, eats a portion of. Gone. Just done. And it's utterly incredible that even in, the version of the game from 15, 20 years ago, it's still a scenario of like, yep, still brutal, still powerful.
As it should be. It's an artifact, right? Like, artifacts shouldn't just appear in your games willy-nilly. They shouldn't come off of a random roll chart. They should be significant events in your campaign. Now, that being said, I'm not sure if one should have just been plopped in as part of a trap in the Tomb of Horrors. But again, it was the Tomb of Horrors. Gaming was a bit different back then, and there was different mentality. I feel like now, if you were to add the Sphere of Annihilation to your game, it should have a whole lot more meaning and purpose. It should be a major part of the plot or story that's going on.
I would agree. So let's look and see, what does the 5e version look like. So when I look at the 3.5, it talks about it being an artifact, whereas now it's a wondrous item and legendary. This 2-foot diameter black sphere is a hole in the multiverse, hovering in space, stabilized by a magical field surrounding it. The sphere obliterates all matter it passes through and all matter that passes through it. Artifacts are the exception. Unless an artifact is susceptible to damage from a Sphere of Annihilation, it passes through the sphere unscathed. Anything else that touches the sphere but isn't wholly engulfed and obliterated by it takes 4d10 force damage. The sphere is stationary until someone controls it. You can use an Arcana check to move it. You can kind of go back and forth. If two people are vying for control, a creature whose space the sphere enters must succeed on a DC 13 Dex saving throw or be touched by it, taking 4d10 force damage. If the sphere comes into contact with a planar portal, such as created by the gate spell, or an extra-dimensional space, such as that of a portable hole, the GM rolls randomly, and again, you've kind of got that same situation. 50% chance the sphere is destroyed, 35% chance it moves through the portal or into an extra-dimensional space, or the last 15% chance is, each creature and object within 180 feet, including the sphere, go to a random plane of existence. So some similarities, but definitely differences of like, oh, it's some damage as opposed to just complete and utter obliteration.
It got downgraded. It does seem like if you were to drop items into it that are smaller than it, they are destroyed. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about a creature, that does not seem to be the case at all. It seems like creatures would always get a saving throw. And even if they're small enough to fit in it, right, is by the reading, and it's not even a very high saving throw.
Yeah, it's a DC 13 to avoid it, and then on top of that, it's a situation that if the object is not fully encompassed by it, it takes damage if it's susceptible to damage. And artifacts are just completely immune to it.
Yes. This version, you can put them all over the place. It doesn't really matter. And they're not even all that, scary.
So, you could say that this version is like a fractured piece of the true Sphere of Annihilation, and use the old rule set of all right, the real artifact, the real thing that just destroys anything it touches. And the legendary version is things that somehow, something, be it, gods, some other kind of anti-Sphere of Annihilation has carved off sections, or maybe just the artifact spawns these lesser versions and puts them out into the world.
I do kind of like that, maybe some kind of failed attempt at destroying the Sphere of Annihilation failed, and it just pooped out a bunch of these little lesser ones that are minor inconveniences.
Perhaps when, you combine it with an extra-dimensional gate, and there's that 15% chance that it goes to another plane of existence, well, when it does that, perhaps it leaves these smaller versions, there. Yeah. Or, as you're traveling, it's just kind of trailing off and leaving them in these, in the planar wake.
So, what do you think? Do you think it should be left as it is and be like, oh, this is a lesser version and we should make a major version, should the actual Sphere of Annihilation should be made? Or do you feel like this just needs to be amped up to its former glory?
So I'm since we have it as a legendary version and a stat block essentially, from a previous edition of an artifact version, I say there's, I think it would be best to have both. have these lesser things. Maybe they're not 2 foot wide, but maybe the legendary ones are a foot wide. And they're not the true things that bring terror. And those are the ones that can actually be controlled, with that control rules. But the artifact one, like, that's some serious mojo to be playing with. And
well, they can be controlled too, but there's a downside to controlling a sphere of annihilation. If you fail the check, it begins moving towards you. Mm-hmm. So I'm totally okay with the vying for control of the sphere of annihilation, because it's kind of risky business.
True.
And not in the Tom Hanks way either.
So I think,
or was it Tom Cruise? I think it was Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. Like, I think having both as options is options are options. Gives the DM the ability to kind of muck around and play with, and then perhaps the legendary one could have smaller things that are less damaging and more plentiful or whatever.
So what would you do to stay with the kind of the sensibility and feel and themes of 5e D&D, yet create a actual sphere of annihilation that is threatening and scary?
So, I would remove the deck save, and I would probably move it to be a con save. And, it's your literally ability to hold yourself together and not be sucked in if you come in contact with it. Mm-hmm. But even if you pass the saving throw, you would have like some kind of like serious amount of damage, enough that lower level characters could still die or could still be obliterated. I would possibly have some kind of disease or other thing that leaves like a lasting imprint upon the body to show that you've come in contact with such a thing. And like that could be the trigger for the adventure of seeing this, and it could be the hint that such a deadly thing is up ahead, or you've passed, whichever way you want to do it. But I would say, like, somebody made contact with it and is crawling away, and you see like the deteriorated and blackened skin all dry and crumpled, and oh, well, this should be a clear sign to anyone who's educated in the arcane that this is something that you need to be careful with.
Oh man, the annihilation curse or disease. Maybe they can spread it as well because they've been infected.
Yeah, I mean,
I do have an idea.
What's your got?
All right, so I do have an idea, and I feel like there's a really easy and elegant solution to upping the potency of a sphere of annihilation, but still being like, okay, we're not going to do the save or suck that happens. It doesn't really happen in 5e anymore. Mm-hmm. Just give it the properties of a disintegrate spell.
Okay.
You could even give it an attack roll, a bonus if you wanted to do that, or you can make it a save or throw. So I think it's a deck save anyway. But it's 10 die 6 plus 40 points of damage. But then I would say you could just max it out to 9th level. So increasing it by like another 3 dice, and that minimum damage. So pretty much, I would say below 5th level and below, you're probably just going to die, based on that amount of damage. If if you fail your save.
So the thing about that, and as we're kind of talking about it, some ideas and things kind of popped into my head. With that, it's just one saving throw. Whereas like when you look at things like turning flesh to stone and some of these other things, there are multiple saves. Now, yes, you pull up a good option of disintegrate is just one thing, and if it's enough damage, you're just out and out dead. But if you want to kind of correlate it to a flesh to stone, it could be a multiple roll scenario where you have to make 3 saving throws, and if you fail 2 of them, you're gone. So it's however you want to roll it, but I feel to fit more in line with the the not as brutal.
Yeah.
Like you could go in that direction, but
I feel like by doing this, it sticks with the sensibilities of 5e because you're literally just lifting the mechanics from someplace else. And actually, I misspoke. For every spell slot of 7th and above, it's another 3d6 of damage. So it'd be 19
dice 6 plus 40.
Plus 40. But, it's like Meteor Swarm range, and it's only one target instead of miles.
Right.
So I feel like that's super legit. And, I like it. And now, like, if you want to go the petrification route or one of those, a lot of those things have, like, if you foul by 5, the bad thing just happens right away.
Right.
So, like, that's another way of doing it as well. But I feel like Sphere of Annihilation, point of impact, boom.
So, I mean, yeah, both things I feel are viable. If you really want the lethality aspect of it and it just coming down to, that single roll. And having that roll as an option is still better than what it was previously. So, like, Disintegrate is certainly the more lethal aspect of it. But I think,
And we're also, you're also going from what was the maximum damage now to well beyond that is the minimum that feel like even for a legendary item, that just feels super weak.
4d10 force damage is pretty pathetic.
Yeah. I mean, I believe the scepter, the scepter of blasting or blast scepter does like 5d8. And that's like, I don't even know if that's very rare. It might be very rare.
So there's definitely things that are out there. And now that's supposed to be like, if the sphere doesn't fully encompass the item, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's still absolutely crazy that we have this legendary item that used to be an artifact, used to be like the terror of the Tomb of Horrors. That's now like, I'm a high level person. I got this.
It went from roar to roar.
So if you like this video, others like it, as well as all the great content over on Nerdarchy.com, you can always help us out by supporting our sponsors. Sponsors like the Heretic's Guide to Devotion and Divinity. Do you feel like the Divine is more of an afterthought in 5e? Something that only clerics and paladins really have a reason to care about? Well, Heretic's Guide to Devotion and Divinity is here to help you make the Divine feel real in 5e with more than 128 pages of divinely inspired content. The upcoming book includes the following: rules and guidelines for making the divine matter, including pantheon and deity cheat sheets, religious ceremonies, divine boons, and sacred vows. Ready-to-play relic hunts will have characters delving into ruined temples and ancient shrines to recover powerful artifacts, including traps, puzzles, and full-color maps. Divine NPCs from which the characters can buy magic items and divine services, complete with inventories, quest hooks, statistics, and descriptions. Religious cults and sects that can be plunged into any 5e campaign, complete organizations with motives, plot hooks, leaders, and henchmen. 30 celestial foes and seraphic horrors that will challenge the player characters with new and exciting abilities. 30 plus sacred magic items and divine relics to reward players with, including beautiful digital and physical item card handouts. Heretic's Guide to Devotion and Divinity is live on Kickstarter now. Back in the first 48 hours and get 2 free 5e adventures.
You can check out that card up here or the link down in the description. But hey, what do you think? How do you feel about the Sphere of Annihilation? Do you like the Nerf version? Or would you just like to see something closer to the earlier versions of it and make it truly a terrible, scary item in the D&D universe?
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click on that notification bell. You know the drill.
Quick reminder, we drop new videos here on the channel several times a week, so come on back. But you can't wait till then? No worries, we got you covered. Check out most evil magic item in D&D, the Book of Vile Darkness.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.